Hyped up, coffeeed up, and ready to go. It is Friday. I thought to myself, is it Friday? Sometimes I get that wrong. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Artist Journal, February 7th, 2025. Broadcasting from a laptop on a hillside where there's a sunset deep in inner space. My name's Adrian Pocabelly, celebrating the weekend early. Just because I feel like it, nothing changes, but the celebrations have begun. Maybe it's the third coffee. Anyways, I think it's going to be a shorter show. I think it should be. Let's see. So, welcome back. This is super interesting. Of course, it's my obsession. I would say for how long now? I mean, I've been kind of vocalizing my interest and, minting or inscribing things on Bitcoin. Well, it's been over a year, actually. How long has it been? It has been a year and a month, I think. We could check at some point. It's been about over a year putting work on Bitcoin, but it's now that the fees are low. I've been going crazy, actually, the last, week, because the fees are really low. And so this is exciting when I see this. To me, this is like actually a perfect example of what I'm talking about, of putting art on Bitcoin. I mean, what is the argument, first of all, very briefly? And I hope, my plan is, I don't want to, overcommit here, but probably Sunday, I will put out a video, or at least make the video on Sunday, on how to put your art on Bitcoin. For those that are wondering, Bitcoin's not for everyone. Some people, the environmental criticism is still there. My impression is it's fairly green, but it does take an enormous amount of energy. So that's something that people have to work out and really do their own research. But I think it has improved in the last few years, from what I understand, in terms of the greenness. But what is the argument for putting your work on Bitcoin at the end of the day? First and foremost, it's the biggest blockchain. It's the oldest blockchain. It's the OG. It is the original blockchain. It is decentralized. It is the most decentralized. It is the most secure. It is, in a sense, the most respected and, I guess, valuable. In a sense, digital gold, right? So when you, as a digital artist, when you're trying to figure out where should I put my work, it kind of stands to reason. It's kind of an obvious choice, environmental considerations aside, of where to put it. Where do you want to put it on, do you want to put it on gold, so to speak, digital gold? And so it becomes a very, as I was saying last episode, a very tantalizing, kind of seductive idea to put your art on Bitcoin. Of course, there are huge limitations. Because of the cost of putting your art on Bitcoin, you need to have small file sizes, which weirdly, I would actually say, goes perfectly with what is increasingly becoming one of the central genres of what I call the second generation of digital art, which is pixel art. This return, in a sense, to pixel art to a certain degree, but it never really, you see Ai Weiwei, again, doing pixel art. Like, it never, it was around. Everybody was kind of familiar. It wasn't new words for me, pixel art. But in a weird way, it's taken on a new seriousness, is one way of thinking about it in the last few years. I'd even say, for me personally, it's only been a couple of years. It happened while I was doing this show, as I've mentioned many times. Didn't know what to do with the early pixel art. Is this art? Right? But when you look at this is pretty cool. This is called Tess. This is by Nicholas Dietrich. And so a work put on Bitcoin, and actually let's look at Nicholas Dietrich's tweet here that he put out. Decided to inscribe a piece on Bitcoin for the first time. Inscription number 842603744, the test, 1 of 1, 198 pixels squared. We'll get into that in a second, and GIF. Now, is it blinking? It is. Wow. That's interesting. I wonder how big this file is. I didn't realize it was blinking. Now, some people remember Uxine when he put out the ordinal, it was an SVG, right? So this is another way of approaching the animation. SVG, very compact file size as well. So finally, before we get back to Nicholas Dietrich, though, I want to wrap up on why Bitcoin. There's also there's this sense of the status, so to speak, of Bitcoin. Where do you want your work to be held? There's also this perception, I would argue, like you see this work on Bitcoin. I'd actually call it kind of a phenomenon, which kind of illustrates the point to a certain degree. If this was on, let's call it Ethereum, or, you can start to look at the work, it almost colors the work slightly, just like 5%. It's like, oh, okay. Or if this was on Base, thought experiment. Okay, this work is on Base. How do you feel about it? What is it worth? This work is on Tezos. What is it worth? One of one on Tezos. Nicholas Dietrich, 150 Tezos, right? What is it worth on Bitcoin? Nicholas Dietrich's first work on Bitcoin. Okay, maybe 300. I don't know, right? So it's kind of interesting in that regard as well, because if you can keep the file size low, which you can if you're Nicholas Dietrich because you're doing pixel art, basically, all of a sudden it's like very interesting, isn't it? If this work was on Rodeo, right, what is it worth? Interestingly. So it's an interesting thought experiment here. And again, should we go to the stars, which seems inevitable, and if we're trading, if we're not going to be carrying the canvases onto these spacecraft. It's probably going to be, but we might still want art. So we're probably going to be, digital art is going to look like a very exciting proposition. I mean, even here and now, today in 2025, as I tell people, the only thing I want that's material are clothes and technology. Everything else is kind of weighs on my shoulders, so to speak. Books, I don't buy books anymore unless it's an art book. And even then, I don't really buy art books anymore. I'd rather go to the library because I'll probably use it just as much. Like I buy books on Kindle because I have one thing and it's my entire library and that's it. Because I don't want the weight, so to speak, of, as someone was telling me recently, it's not that you own, when you own stuff, it owns you. And I very much, to me, that really just I related to that. So I'll just say we're back to digital art. And again, there's finally the point I didn't want to miss is the preservation aspect. Of all blockchains, which is most likely to survive the test of time and even be here in 100, 500, or 1,000 years, what's your best bet? Which you also have to consider, right? So what's kind of cool about this whole situation, and I'm not an expert, like there was Bitcoin stamps as far as works that are basically on the blockchain, which as far as I understand are more, so to speak, immutable than ordinals. Theoretically, ordinals the developers could still kind of get rid of it, but I think it's too late, is sort of my impression from how people talk about it. To get that kind of consensus would be too hard, as far as I understand the issue. So, again, in terms of your work surviving for the long term, what's your best bet? Even over canvases, right? Maybe the Earth at some point, maybe the environmental issue becomes too large, right? Where Earth becomes uninhabitable. But maybe at that point we're in the stars. Where do you want your art to be? It's kind of back to this whole thing. And we may be, just finally on this point, I've made it before, but it's worth restating. We may be in a kind of precious window of opportunity where the fees are low. They're about 1 to 2 V-bytes, maybe 3 or 4 every once in a while per block, which is about as cheap as it gets. And Bitcoin's still basically below $100,000. What if Bitcoin goes to $2 million, like people say? Or $500,000? All of a sudden your costs are 5x. So all of a sudden to do even your 10 kilobyte work right now at 1 or 2 V-bytes, it's about, let's call it $7 for two, let's call it 2 VB. It's about $7 for a 10 kilobyte file. Okay. So let's say we have the same low usage of the block time, which some people call the most precious computing, computing you can get, which right now is at dirt cheap prices at the lowest. Like they're running out of transactions to do on Bitcoin. So you couldn't ask for better, more favorable circumstances. What happens when Bitcoin's at $500,000, right? Let's say just even now with, all of a sudden that 10 kilobyte file is $35 US, right? In Canadian terms, that's like $55, right? Speaking as a Canadian. So you see what I'm saying? This may be a window of opportunity. And so that's what gets me excited here, especially an artist, say, like Nicholas Dietrich. Perfect. Poetic, as I like to call him, enigmatic pixel artist, and putting the work on Bitcoin. Like, to me, this is, in a sense, this is the dream, so to speak. And we have a comment coming up, like, I don't see too many tabs on art on Bitcoin. And like, why is that, basically, as we're going to see in a second? There's a couple of reasons. First, it's kind of hard to track. Like I would actually have to, do more searching. So that's probably the main reason. I don't have a method, frankly. I don't know. I don't think Gamma has notifications, and that's just one thing. Like, how do you follow it? How much time are you going to put in? The other reason that it is because a lot of the art hasn't really jumped out at me. For my own personal thing, like I've seen some. We've had Acid Boy. We've shown some of that. That's, that sings to me, so to speak. But there's not a ton of art on Bitcoin that has just jumped out at me and say, I have to put this on. In a sense, to a certain degree, my eye is looking for it just with this test piece, so to speak, or this work called Test by Nicholas Dietrich. I see it, I go, thank you, front page, newspaper of the imagination. Let's go, because it's not just about this artwork. In a sense, as we see here, Nicholas Dietrich has made much more complicated works. We saw this the other day. I can't believe I didn't get this. Like, we see, like, the brilliance here of these works, and here you have more frames, so it's a larger file. So it's not the most complex work we've ever seen by Nicholas Dietrich here, but it's partially, like, the work's awesome, and I love how it's a GIF, but it's partially about what it represents, which is poetry on visual poetry on Bitcoin. I mean, that's kind of the takeaway here from my concern. Like, and that is no small matter. Like, that's kind of why, to me, when I see this, this is exciting. So let's leave it at that. Decided to inscribe a piece on Bitcoin for the first time. Inscription number. I actually really like how you put the inscription number. I should do that. Sometimes, we're still learning here. One other thing I want to mention. So a 1 of 1. I don't even know if Nicholas Dietrich has a 1 of 1 on Tezos, right? And we were just mentioning last episode, 1 of 1s on Bitcoin. Oh man. You want to get excited from a collector's point of view. And it's so international. This, this is Bitcoin. This is like in Saudi Arabia, they might be like, oh, really? What's this? Right? So, they're all international, but this is kind of like, it's another level. I would argue, not to overstate the point. So a 1 of 1. I thought this was interesting. 198 pixels squared. So it looks like Nicholas Dietrich actually expanded the work, which... It's an interesting question here, I would argue, because so here, I'll show you the original file size. So here, this could actually be a smaller work, and it's a GIF, interestingly. But like, if you were to take this into Photoshop, you would see actually for every pixel, it'd be 4 pixels, right? So you could actually make a smaller file size here. Now, we do have the file size info on Ordiscan here, 21 kilobytes. You could probably make it like 12 or 13, maybe 14 is probably what it would be if you actually made it the original size. And it brings up an interesting question, because my take on this has always been, you make it the original file size, and every artist, there's no right answer here. Every artist has to come to their own conclusion. But you put it to it'd be something like this. And then you can always just expand it infinitely. From there, it's pixel art, nearest neighbor, as everybody says. And so it can be transformed from there. So it's an interesting question. So it's an interesting decision here by Nicholas Dietrich to do that, to make it, to double the size, which many pixel artists do in order to have a larger canvas. So very, 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 very interesting, isn't it? Hypogeum. I can't believe I don't have this work. I must have had no Tezos in my wallet at the time. So let's continue. Just a big shout out. Collector Official. Under the handle here on X is collector_OG. Doing my curator job, and today I invite you to talk about an amazing artist and his techniques, introducing Pokebelly. So take a coffee and enjoy good art. This was a super nice thread here. And digging up some works from all over the place here. Just a very, very nice thread. So thank you, Collector OG, also known as Collector Official, who is here. And just, you can't really ask as an artist and an independent curator, which also means a lot. And then links to the website. So I just want to give a big shout out. Give Collector OG a follow if you appreciate that kind of thing. Maybe they'll do it for you. So just big shout out and thank you to Collector OG. Comment/show, just one comment here on YouTube. Hood by Air, in my opinion, for BTC Ordinals, still Magic Eden. Interesting. BTC Ordinals, still Magic Eden. It's kind of like, they seem to be like the open sea, so to speak, to use 2021 sort of thinking of the, if you want to trade your PFPs, it seems to be the place. It's kind of interesting, but maybe the mechanics, put it this way. It evokes a question. Let's say I want to create an auction on Bitcoin. Is that possible? I don't even know. Right? So it's interesting. So there may be something to be said for this. You should check Powell Duco works. He did 2 projects with Art Blocks in the past. Cool. And yeah, Art Blocks, they put out so much stuff and it seems to be more generative, which I'm just not a huge expert in. I've always, just finally on generative, which I've brought up in the past, it always feels like it's a specialty that just is, put it this way, I think my focus and enjoyment is really in this kind of what I call the second generation of digital art, and which I have 2 main qualities of. Grew up with video games around them, so digital, pixelated and digital media, imagery, graphics, and the second being painting with a computer, being able to paint with a mouse and a Mac and a GUI, graphic user interface. And so it's kind of like that's what makes it the second generation. It's a shift. And I consider generative art very first generation. It's, programming, right, to get your visual results. And so it's just not my sort of bailiwick, so to speak. And it doesn't, it's its own kind of tradition within digital art. And you could argue is the first, right? Pre-GUI, pre-mouse, pre-Mac, all these things. So anyways, but thank you. I'll keep my eye out for Pavel Dudko. Thank you for the comment. Also on X, Oblivion Fields, thanks for another great show. This is the comment I was speaking of earlier. You speak a lot on Bitcoin, but I haven't noticed too many of your tabs dedicated to art on Bitcoin, and maybe I've missed them. Could you showcase a few artists you enjoy that publish on Bitcoin in future shows? Again, there aren't there are artists who are on Bitcoin, and I just haven't looked that hard, but there hasn't been a ton that's been like, holy, I can't wait to show this. But I haven't even really looked. So I did, I'd say refer to my earlier comments on it. And it's like, I hope to do more and more. Let's put it that way. I'm interested in the ordinal scene, but it's all work, right? I'm interested in the ordinal scene and have minted a couple of things myself, but I haven't dipped too far to have a good read just yet. So yeah, like Acid Boy, for example, has put out some works. I think Lena Eckhart just got on, who we have a work of actually later on this episode on Tezos. I think just was onboarded, so to speak, onto Gamma for their special print partner sort of program. So it's coming. It's coming. I hope more than ever. So let's continue. Thank you for the comment. Little Cakes, stoked you showed Peter Ritchie 40. Love his work and needs to be seen by more, in my opinion. Indeed, very interesting artist. So interesting discovery. We have a couple more this episode. Thank you, Cakes, for highlighting that. Brain Dead, thanks for the highlight, Adrian. You're welcome. Always interesting. Pinstake, and it hasn't been deleted. To be honest, I will probably return to Rodeo, and Waffles, aka Pinstake, has. NBTC is a must. You're making a very strong case for taking advantage of the current mempool. So for those that are wondering what the mempool is, here it is. Let's just take a look. Yeah, as you see here, the last block, it was 2 sats. Now it's 4, but you see what I'm saying? You can get in for about 2 sats per VByte, and it'll get in, within an hour, usually, depending on what time of day and all this sort of thing. So yes, so I am on the case as far as this video. I hope this weekend is the plan. And also, anything out? Yes, now is the time. BTC video is the next high priority. Exactly. Daggy D, this was a really nice comment, who, of course, is tearing up the Tezos blockchain with their collecting. These podcasts are now something I look forward to on a regular basis. I recently joined the channel, and I've already learned so much about the Tezos trenches, you probably don't realize how much influence you have on newcomers entering the space. For me, it has been an absolute joy. A million thanks for that, Mr. Pokebelly. Mr. Pokebelly, I really appreciate this. As I put in my response, it's like, that's kind of like my, in terms of doing this show, like the ultimate kind of satisfaction is someone who may not know what's going on and then sees what's going on and is excited. Because then it's like, okay, it's not just me and a few other people or whatever that's excited about this art. It's like someone coming in, listening to the thesis and the argument, so to speak, and going, I agree. And Daggy D has, opened the wallet, so to speak, is backing it up. Like you can tell Daggy D feels that way because Daggy D is buying a lot of this art. So super interesting and awesome to hear. Regarding art on Bitcoin, there's an amazingly, there's an article we have coming up here from Daggy D that we're just going to touch on. Regarding art on Bitcoin, there's an amazingly cool indie drop studio for artists that I highly recommend, Sovereign Art. If you're thinking about putting art on the Bitcoin blockchain, you might want to check out what they're doing, and a link to Shibboleth 88. So thanks for highlighting these two. I guess Sovereign Art would be an indie drop studio for sovereign artists, and this is where the Sense kind of concept art project, I guess, was started. So it's all very interesting. I mean, one of the big questions I have, so Gamma works on stacks as well. Like it works directly, you can inscribe an ordinal onto the Bitcoin blockchain, but there's also stacks, which is probably, I'd call it the most prominent Bitcoin layer 2. And my question to myself is, let's say you have a 10 megabyte file or even a 3 megabyte file. Can you upload that, say, to Stacks? And then, because Gamma has a Stacks option. And I wonder, if we go here, you'll see Stacks, right? But we still see pretty small, what looks like pretty small files, pixel art and this sort of thing. And again, this is kind of what I'm used to here. So again, most of the art I've seen on Bitcoin, there is art and I've missed a ton, right? But it's kind of like, this is why I don't show, and nothing against this work, by the way. It's just like more PFPs. It's more, more PFPs, frankly, which isn't really, so all to say, my question is, can you upload big files to Stacks? So this is my next kind of quest to know the answer of. And actually, let's just finish the comments here. Thank you for the awesome comments, Daggy. And also, and I think that's it. So what a few comments, but all like super high quality. Thank you everybody for posting. Deggy D posted this article and posted on X to let people know. Deggy D is getting excited. Maybe has been for a while, but is very excited by this scene. Did NFTs revolutionize the art scene? And talks about the history. First of all, it's what I was, laughing to myself as I'm drinking a coffee. Suspiciously well written is how I would describe this piece. And I hope you are feeling better, Deggy, and that you recover well. Breaking their sacrum bone. I think that's your tailbone, if I'm not mistaken. That sounds painful. Ice skating, that sounds about right. Oh, that sounds painful. So I hope you're, but more time for the NFT scene, as Deggy was saying, and had some very nice comments here. And a couple I want to highlight here, very nice highlight here on the show, and talking about how just talking about the show here, and also art made on a laptop it's almost designed to be viewed on a laptop in this whole discussion. Deggy D was mentioning rather than a gallery, and the struggle, this kind of, it's almost back to what I've talked about, this almost being like a parallel tradition to painting. And it's so, as I describe it, being so alien in terms of how you go about, there's undo, there's copy and paste, as Ed was saying, there are certain features about it that are completely different. Even the pixelation is part of this whole thing. That maybe this extends to the galleries as well. Like the fact that there's this awkwardness of showing digital art in galleries, and how do you do that is kind of maybe exhibit A, perhaps, and perfectly illustrates how alien this medium is, and how different it is from painting. So so it's a very cool article. Go check it out on Substack. If you go to Deggy D's feed, it is posted, and there is no hygiene. Edgy art by no hygiene, and I really like the conclusion here too. These artists are breaking tradition in how art is made and sold. They're questioning what a digital image is, what a pixel represents, and what they say about us. Like, you know what this feels to me, and I have no idea. Deggy D seems like a very nice person, but it seems like some a person who is out of the traditional scene. I don't know, but they seem very they're a very, again, suspiciously good writer here. What a pixel represents and what they say that says about us. Decentralized nation networks and AI just add another level to the conversation, right? All these new digital technologies. Will this revolutionize the art world? That depends. The pieces are in place. The tools exist. The artists are already at work. All that remains is for enough people to pay attention. So it seems to me that Deggy D is buying into the narrative here, that many of us are buying into, that this is legit and significant is maybe the more accurate word. It's significant. Let's continue. Le Monde. So this is kind of hilarious. Okay, I think I brought up, here we go. This is under a paywall, but I did want to just highlight this. So I was talking about how, in France, how the curators, they must be mortified knowing, of what's going on with the Mona Lisa. It's been going on for years. And you hear Laurence Descartes, president of the Louvre Museum, who's been in the news a lot. And here is the translation. If the public wants to appropriate a work with selfies, we must accept it, right? It's like, we just got to let it go. And so I guess that's Laurence Descartes, who is the new president of the Louvre. I think new. Since 2021. The president of the Louvre since 2021, but they've really been making a lot of headlines recently. So interesting headline from Le Monde that I just wanted to highlight. This was interesting too. So the New York Times, this was posted in the community. As you see here, 10-minute challenge, Bruegel's Hunters in the Snow, behind a paywall. But it's kind of interesting what the New York Times is doing here. And it kind of illustrates a lot. So it's like, can you spend 10 minutes with this painting? Right? And I thought it was kind of interesting because it's like, we do that all the time here. Like every show. And we don't even get into every little detail. So it's kind of interesting. I also thought the approach, in what we have here I guess the reader gave us the full article here. But and it's interesting how they're tackling this Bruegel. Imagine it's 1560s and your friend, they're really in the content of the painting. Then in a single room, you encounter 6 large paintings. They are the work of Peter the Bruegel. Okay, together these imaginary scenes depict villagers. One of the 6 paintings. So then on to, okay, so here you have some paintings. The paintings could have been startling and avant-garde in 1565. Up until then, most of what you have seen in wealthy people or aristocrats' houses would be portraits or religious. So talking about the new content in Bruegel's paintings, which is actually super important. And then we're in the scene with at least 84 people and at least 29 animals, but only a set of eyes is actually looking back at us. But this is kind of what I wanted to highlight here. From here, the trees in the foreground, polarized, that kind of takes you through the painting. But it's kind of interesting. I thought it was interesting just in terms of how different it is. I would argue, like, in a sense, that's why I say these aren't art reviews, in a sense. I'm completely taking this from an artist's perspective, the works we're looking at. In terms of how is this built? The content is in there, but it's almost, I don't want to call it secondary because it's the poetry, right? It's crucial, but you might even call it central, and I would agree with that. But here the sign in the distance, there appears to be a chimney fire while people rush with. Could you imagine? Would you watch the show? I wouldn't watch a show where I was hearing about this. Someone taking me through the painting. To me, so will it make it through the winter? Are they having fun on the ice? Like, will that burn the house down? Bruegel doesn't answer those questions, but for him, all that joy and all that suffering, the dogs and the skaters, the birds and the hunters belong together on a single canvas. And we haven't seen anything here about, what is the medium? I assume it's oil on canvas. How new was that? Who else was working, along those times? So just kind of interesting. And I bring this up. This is in New York Times, right? Let's continue. Object.com, new feature on the Block Collector Leaderboard. Starting with 12 artists, you can check the ranking of top collectors for each artist. So you have to connect your wallet. So I haven't done this yet. It's the biggest stumbling block for me of all these new things is connecting my wallet. It's still Object, so of course it's fine. But of course, be careful. In the coming weeks, we'll be adding, in a sense, so I was trying to do a search, but I couldn't find anything. But it seems to be working for everybody else. So that's kind of cool. So you can see who your biggest collectors are. Kind of a nice way to reward people. Gamma, so the platform we were just discussing, Bitcoin platform, introducing the new Gamma, live today in beta. So I didn't even see this. And so with a supported wallet, Xverse, so we're going to get into this weekend. Xverse Wallet, if you want to get started. Lether's also a good one. You can automatically link both chains' addresses together into one profile in just 2 clicks. And I think they're talking about stacks. They are. Supporting both Bitcoin L1 and L2 stacks. So I'm going to have to do some experiments here. Soon we'll be rolling out an end-to-end discovery and exploration page for you to find trending works and hidden gems. So maybe this will help me, right, in terms of finding works to show on the show. There's also going to be charts, collector, creator profiles, collection pages, ordinals, and stacks, marketplace, ordinals minting. So you can read all about that, but they are continuing to develop there. So top collections, so lots of ordinal minting is also live today. I thought they already had that, but maybe there's a different, maybe that's with the layer 2 if you want to keep it cheaper. So all to say, pretty interesting. Tons of new features here. Top creators, and there's the Sense again, and so keep in touch. So it's a beta. Warning there. Cider. Postcards by Cider now live, 0.1 reserves, physicals included, above 0.4 mark. So if you bid, I guess, more than 0.4, you get the physical. And here they are. So a very cool looking show from Cider. I believe this is in Milan. It is. Solo show in Milan. So nice work from Cider there. This was also cool. Mech.txt, who of course I follow, Michael Micasso, yeah boy, who I think is out of the design studio. New CCO typeface soon. Very nice typeface here. Love it. as you see, kind of a horizontal, kind of retro looking. Dan Control, GM, look at how much, 734,000 views, 1,500 retweets, 13,000 likes on this Dan Control work. So the argument, I have been persuaded. You have to decide when you post your image, is this to sell to collectors, in which case maybe you put a link, and then you have to decide, or is this to just get as new followers and get my work out there, in which case you probably don't want to put a link, right? Because these numbers are spectacular, and they don't almost exclusively never go with the link. So it's interesting. As someone that follows work on the show, like, put it this way, I don't know if this is a new work or not. So that would be the nice thing about the link for me. Like I saw this earlier, I thought it was an old work, and I think it might be. So, but posted February 1st. So again, 735,000 views. Nice work for Dan Control. And of course, we saw this work by Dan Control, School of Fish, edition of 1, sold. And we see here new experimentation from Dan Control. Very cool work, School of Fish, edition of 1, selling. And let's see, to Neon Monk for 150 Tezos. Nice. So $129. Nice sale. Here's Yuri J, Shape of Water, and this is at auction, a 1 of 1. And there's Deggy D, Urin Yakon, and Glitched. So let's take a closer look in another domestic interior here, and interesting windows in the background, and interesting palette here, and huge. The pixelation, I think this is the mosaic filter. At max, like at very large, turning it into almost bathroom tiles. Very nicely done. And this incredibly painterly texture that we see in the bathtub and just around the whole painting. So Yuri J continues to get ever more painterly in a really beautiful, rich way. So that is still at auction. I think there's, how much time is left? 6 hours. So if you're watching this, you'll have to be fast. Here's Petra Courtright. This is from December 2024. I miss this. This is on Verse. And of course, Petra Courtright, what was it? Kind of like a classic post-internet artist, as they're called. And so interesting, I didn't realize they had a series on Verse of Petra Courtright's work, kind of associated somewhat with, I think, Simkovitz. What I can't remember the first name. Well-known kind of art consultant, collector guy out of L.A. Steven Simkovic, I think, is the name. And so interesting digital painting here on Verse. So a little bit of overlap here from the contemporary art scene onto the blockchain scene. A little bit with Petra Courtright here. Cool painting. And I've seen some of these, I think, at Societe here in Berlin. Not these ones, but where I think they were printed inkjet on canvas, is I believe how she often does it. But I haven't seen her work in person for at least a couple of years, I think. So cool work here. Just want to highlight that. Kazuhiro Ehira, this is a new one, 100% natural behind hidden toxicity. So interesting title here, and we again see these hard contrasts and very fast and magnified mark making with digital mark making. Again, very textured, even masked out here. A little bit of change in color. So video, and you see what looks like a person and a drink, and maybe ATH is all-time high, not sure. Edition of 6 for 39 Tezos, Deggy D, tearing up the Tezos blockchain. Kazuhiro Ehira, Warn Edit 1201. So what looks like, if I had to guess, a glitch ROM, right? So interesting black and white, but not sure. And so interesting title here too. Edition of 1, 200 Tezos from Kazuhiro Ehira. And we've seen 2 or 3 of these so far. Here is Hasdrubal Waffle back on rodeo after the party has quieted down a little bit and doing 191 mints here. Pretty cool work from Waffles. Almost looks like, you see, it almost looks like tiling, doesn't it? But then animating the tiling, and it almost looks like a face, and those are eyes that are going back and forth. So interesting animation here, interesting colors, kind of basic colors. Interesting, right? What is the title on this? Reterritorialization, so maybe announcing the return to rodeo. Now this one we saw on X earlier. So being posted on rodeo, it looked like 191. And here's another one, sycophants and other things from the art chain. So I think not happy. I mean, I think not happy with people trying to tell Waffles what to do. I think that is, at the end of the day, put it this way, for artists, ultimately the act of making art, I would argue, for many people, I mean, people make art for different reasons, but for many people, the act of making art it's an expression of freedom at the end of the day. It's kind of like, here's somewhere in my life, in my world, where I can do anything I want, right? And I think when you get too much feedback saying you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that, or why are you doing this? This is wrong. I think that's what's going on here, if I had to venture a guess. Interesting. Love these kind of, again, what's interesting here, just on a purely formal conceptual level, is how we have like what look like, overstretched pixels here, right? But they're in the same canvas as, say, pretty sharp pixels, fairly sharp pixels, right? So it's an interesting just kind of a combination of exports. It shows it's not one export, that's for sure. And that's probably part of the secret of the richness here. Here we see some dithering. And you do wonder, Waffles showing interest in Bitcoin, a work like this that's static, that is kind of like, you could probably export this as 50 kilobytes, maybe. I don't know, but a smaller version, not this large, a smaller version. So interesting, cool work from Waffles, also known as, I think it's the Struble Waffle, the account. It is. Okay, awesome. Die with the most likes. This was cool. I don't know where these are. Kind of looks like Zoom. Meeting chat. The war was over. Okay, so classic kind of die with the most likes work, but interesting combination here. You see the contrast. First, there's a lot of movement, but you see big brush underneath with the color, and then very skinny, thin kind of marker over top, and you get that immediate contrast, and it looks beautiful. Interesting piece, interestingly animated. Always a commentary there. Here's Jan Lucas Magone, Alone in the Web. Special piece, and this came out February 6th, Feelings of Solitude. So again, really nice contrast here, as we see the one figure on fire as all of these figures around move around this one figure in solitude. Poetic work, quite beautiful, isn't it? Edition of 15 for 10 Tezos and 6 gone. Here's Scamra, Manet's The Luncheon on the Grass, or Le Déjeuner sur l'Herbe, one assumes. I don't know if I've ever heard the English translation. If that's when, it kind of looks like Le Déjeuner sur l'Herbe, but I think. So let's see here. So again, cool art history pastiche or remix by Scamra here. I believe this is on Rodeo as well. This is 97 minted on Rodeo. And here, work in progress from Fragonard's The Happy Accident. So we saw the other one. And so this also seems to be working. Look at this, beautiful. It almost looks like Art Deco or something with the framing device here. So AI continuing to dazzle here. For all the skeptics out there, I mean, again, I refute it thus. Look at that. So pretty rad. And here's another one. Let's just make it larger so we get, oh, it's smaller, interestingly. So again, just these very rich painterly textures. Exciting work here. And here's one on a one-of-one from Scamra on Tezos, and he's playing with these kind of big pixels recently, big painterly. They almost look like brush strokes, vertical brush strokes, don't they? And you see here, it has like a similar effect, right? As you see, like they end differently. So the brush strokes. So all very interesting because it basically has a similar effect as the, I better finish this broadcast before things collapse on me here. Okay, Canuck Zapata. More beautiful work from Canixapida, again, working with Stable Diffusion and Python. Rad, playing again with the blockchain, art on the blockchain. These are collectors, and he started collecting baseball cards as a child and is now a respected collector on Tezos blockchain. A little bit of humor and just awesome. Again, these like super rich, painterly AI, composed works and then adding script on top. Just awesome. This is a collector obsessed with technological conceptual art like Ixonemos. Not sure if I've seen Ixonemo's work, and here you almost see like keyboards, and there's some work on the computer. Super interesting. Almost looks familiar, that face. And Canixapida, the fashion collector, is looking for new art so maybe a preview of a work coming up here. And again, the art in the background looks spectacular. And this is a one of one also, and this is on object. So continuing an interesting size, like canvas size, interesting ratio. She now has a large collection, including Guru Guru Hyena and Little Cakes. Awesome. Here is Sophie Ogor with a new work. This is, I believe, an HTML-based work because there's an advanced mode. I'm not going to press that just because don't want to lose the show here. So cool work here from Sophie. Almost like a girl in her bedroom, and then maybe this is the figure. Kind of interesting poetics there. Edition of 6 for 660 Tezos. Here's Nov 1914. Edition of 4 still available, and another bouquet, cool flower work here. And we're playing with the corners of the frame now. Interestingly, so cool work there. Direccionado, so maybe direction in Spanish, if I had to guess, and mixing a few different elements here. A house, a walking figure with the new kind of mark-making device, maybe vector brush, and other elements. Edition of 1, and that's sold for 35 Tezos. Nice sale. Sobre, also by selling for 25 Tezos, both to Mr. Bezold, and interesting, more experimental work here. Almost looks like a stage. Interesting colors, too, from Nov 1914. Here's Mishi Asu, collected by Daggy D, Picklestone. And so here, cool one of one here from very experimental, challenging artist Mishi Asu. Bought for 11 Tezos. Here is, how do you say, MSU, maybe we have the name here, M. Suksu. I just bought a work by M. Suksu. So here, this is on Zora. So still putting out work on Zora, and quite has this kind of airbrush looking style. 77 minted so far. So there are still collectors on Zora. Here's an interesting one by Souls, About You, almost the flower theme again, and again, very challenging, kind of experimental, interesting artist. Very unique in what looks like kind of a bouquet of flowers done with squares, but who knows? Could be just an abstract. About You, edition of 1, 8 Tezos. Here is Mumbleboy. 6 minted. This on Rodeo. And so cool, kind of smaller, almost a simpler work, right? By Mumbleboy on Rodeo. Here is Pete Ritchie, who Little Cakes was mentioning in the comments. Interesting. Right? Interesting AI here. Never seen their work before the other day, and almost looks like the old AI, right? Like, do they call it the GAN? Kind of looks like that old Google AI, that's a little freakier. Nice composition here. So, yeah, cool artists. The people are drunk with it, and it has entered the marrow of their bone. So interesting work. Here's No Hygiene. More weirdness, the cat in the square, and what looks like lightning or meat, not sure, and angels with black wings. Of course, I follow No Hygiene, and this is pretty rad. Smells like protein. Wild work by No Hygiene here, and the happy faces. Not sure if it's raw AI. Listed for 250 Tezos, so No Hygiene, definitely liking their work there too, and feeling like this is a good one. Mega CD. Love the this is Haiti Rocket. Did you forget your password? Almost the Windows 95. Messaging. there. Mega CD, we see Zip in a transform and also the Mario in 3D. Edition of 13 and selling out at 42 Tezos each. Pretty good. Here is Manadol on base, I think. Morning from the Flower Market, day 547. Base paint, XYZ, which is kind of like Object 98. All right, similar idea, but on base. Here's Our Milk, Tired Pixels, number 72. And this was also sent to me. Be your own hero, not a reflection of someone else's expectations. Just a cool pixel artwork. And again, seemingly referencing that stained glass, and that was February 6th, just came out. This seems to be referencing Doom. This is Ed Wood's on-chain SBF. Maybe we see SBF there in a Doom, and there's FTX. Yes, indeed. And so, edition of 1, and this is available for 25 Tezos, and what looks like Shakespeare, Meme Lord Mo Memington von Memmenstein of Memewelt. A thank you to the Meme Lord for being an avid collector and supporter. So maybe just sending out a Petsky work, also by Ed Woods, on Tezos. And as we continue here, Louis Osborne, Head Factory, almost looking like Lego heads here. Cool animation, a fun work, and doing the happy. I don't see any sad faces, but I see different. It's almost like the emojis on Lego heads, which is pretty cool. Edition of 25 for 8 Tezos, 19 left. Here is Burka Byram, Trojan Horse. I thought this was a pretty cool work here by Burka Byram. Of course, famous image. You know what's interesting? The Iliad, you don't have the Trojan horse. And the Odyssey, it's already happened. You have to go to the Aeneid if you want the story of how, I'm pretty sure, because they storm, you have to go to the Aeneid by Virgil, which I highly recommend if you've never read it, where you actually see like the capture of Troy. I think it's book 2. That's one of the most incredible poetic experiences you'll ever have. So anyways, cool work here by Burka Byram. Beautiful work here by Daniel W. Love the color on this one. This is on Foundation, interestingly. We'll see if it loads up. Love this work. Skeletons Reading in the Fire. Denial 2. Fabulous. Buy now for 0.16 or auction for 0.027. Beautiful piece. Great Nick Shumika Square Bouquet. So more work made with Excel. I believe it's Excel. And here, maybe a close-up of a square bouquet. So not sure what the original reference is here, but cool-looking work. That is an edition of 5 for 4 Tezos. Here's Renki, picked up by Deggy D. Did they have to put in an offer? They did. 30 Tezos. Nice. Yeah, with Renki, you almost need to put in the offer. And I better hurry here. Before things collapse on me. We only have a few more tabs, so that's called a Daki. Here's Datura. I believe this was picked up by, oh no, that was a different one, picked up by Deggy D. Deggy D all over the place. I better, before my machine collapses, I'm going to have to speed up here. Here's Muji, Look at the Sky. Cool work. Love the little kind of breaking of the frame there. Edition of 7, that looks sold out. Here's Renato Marini, edition of 15 for 4 Tezos, or 370. Cool looking pixel artwork. Cool title too. Here's Pixel Fool and Nicholas Sassoon just on X. Interesting kind of wavy pixel art here. Interesting collab. Oh, I guess that's from 2021. Interesting. So that's an older one. Here is Lena Eckhart, who I believe just got on Gamma as a partner. Anybody can mint on Gamma, by the way, but there's also partners that you can apply for. Escape. So cool work. I'm not going to leave it on too long because of the flashing. It goes on for a minute. So pretty cool video here. Created in Touch Designer, which I still haven't tried out. I should try that out. Here's Bosque Gracias and Andre Oliveira Cebola, a glitch. So another kind of flashing work here. And 1-bit visuals, and this is at auction for 12 Tezos. Here's a work by Nebular called Disconnected. Really nice textures here. And I believe this is a GIF. I don't see a video, and again, analog video glitch. Here's a work by LB, and sorry, Gabriel Coy and Rihanna Moraes. Almost like a video game. Cool work. Let me continue before we lose the show. Strange Thing. Cool works here with fellowship, engagement farming. So almost looking like classical mythology or something with the faces in the plants. Another cool work, Forever Alpha, daily highlights. So interesting works here by Strange Thing, and you see the pixelated faces. Here's the series. Again, seeming to move into 17th century painting, seemingly. Mikey Wilson, After Midnight, AI artwork here at the end, and cool scene here. And where is this put? This was put on Rodeo, and 49 minted so far. And here finally is White Solitude, AI painting. And you see the power of AI texture here. You wouldn't even know that it's not a painting if you didn't know any better. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Have a great weekend. Hope to put out the Bitcoin work this weekend. Until next time, take care.